and that's driven property prices up as well.
Is Bowie suffering because of all of these home mortgages that are collapsing? And
I can't say exactly why Bowie is suffering. I think a lot of it may have come into several different avenues. Maybe the people figured they could buy the house of their dreams rather than starting off early, and there was an avenue available for them to do it. Lenders were more willing to lend money. Builders were more willing to build.
right.
So when you combine all those things together without some type of common sense or weights and measures, that's how we've ended up where we are.
Have lots of parents, well, I guess you won't know just the amount, are willing to, sign for these homes?
For their children?
Yes.
Sometimes.
I wouldn't. I'm sorry, I wouldn't.
That depends on your own responsibility and your own child. And that's why I make it a point that when I sit down with a client for the first time, regardless of their age, I'm going to ask the tough questions because...
What do you ask an 18-year-old?
Well, first off, I'll ask them, why are they here? They're looking to buy a home. I'm going to sit down with them and say, okay, what are your expectations? What are you looking at? I think the 18-year-old thing, because it's the legal age, is one thing, but I think we're more looking towards mid-20s.
All right.
And so forth. I'm going to ask them, what are they expecting? I'm going to ask them, what have they saved? How long they've been on their job? What their educational background is? What is the potential of their earnings? And things along this line.
Are you married? You have children?
That's always in there too.
You're right.
Because you're looking at two income households versus one income household, and it's like putting a puzzle together. You have to have all the pieces in all the right places in order to say, well, I can't tell someone they cannot buy a house.
Right. Now, can you take 2 or 3 families who want to get together and buy a big home and put all 3 of their names on the mortgages? Sure. You can do this?
Certainly.
Because I've noticed in the neighborhood, I'm not going to say where, but there's 5 and 6 cars in driveways. So I've kind of sat and thought about this. There are probably 2 and 3 families who are getting together to pay for this house.
Certainly.
And that can be legally done.
Most certainly. It's called joint tenants.
Joint tenants, okay.
Sure. People that aren't married, fiancés, can purchase a home together.
They can?
Sure.
And each one has to sign their mortgage, I'm sure, because if they're not married, But it's still easy to buy a home.
Well, there are a lot more hoops to jump through, and there's a lot more discretion well, not discretion, I'll say. Let's say that the file is definitely going to be looked at a lot harder than it would have been before. In one manner of stopping the bleeding, we want to make sure that clients get into, first and foremost, a property that they can afford.
Yes, they do.
Years ago, when I bought my first house,
isn't that a wonderful feeling? Your
many
first
years
house?
ago. Oh Lord. I bought it. It was my first home.
Mine was $20,000.
It wasn't my dream home.
Yes.
But it was where it was what they used to call a starter home.
Nice.
And a starter home is going to be based on your income, your assets, your availability of funding, and so forth. But that's the first step. You can't immediately jump into that house of dreams.
You can't go to $1 million house. Everybody would like to do that. Everybody would.
But it doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't. You have to start small and grow.
And you have a lot of issues where people did try to do that with different programs that were available to them, and it's definitely exploded.
It has exploded. And we have a lot more children. I'm not saying people, hey, stop having babies, but that when the first baby comes along and the second baby comes along, that throws a big monkey wrench in your funds that you have. You have a child, you have 2 children. And divorce. One walks out the door and leaves the other one there. We were talking a while ago about that. It takes really a whole village to raise a child, but sometimes it's going to take a whole village to get a house. It does take a village because you deal with them on every aspect of what it is to have a home.
Well, the thing is, they need the education first and foremost. I usually strongly recommend that a client go through a first-time home buyer's course so that they can at least understand the process and understand the players.
Okay, so
what's your mortgage lender?
You show them or something?
Well, actually, it usually takes several hours, and it's usually done by nonprofit organizations in the area.
Here in Bowie?
They'll do it here in Bowie. There's some in other counties as well. They're also offered through HUD, Housing and Urban Development.
Yes.
And they're very, very thorough in explaining to the potential purchaser what's going to go on, and they explain the process. As I said, you know, I do this every day, and I try to focus on the first-time home buyers because there's a lot of it. I always tell them, I'm going to give you more information than you're ever going to want, but it's probably going to be information that you're going to need.
Let's hope they remember it.
I'm always there to remind them because I've done it so many times. You know, and they talk about the lending process. They talk about finding a home. They talk about working with a realtor. They talk about title companies. They talk about home inspections. They talk about taxes. They talk about homeowners insurance. They try and cover as many bases as possible. And I try to reinforce that with them on a continual basis.
Suppose you take them to a home that they just, oh, I want this house, but maybe it's $1 million. How do you get them to come down off the high?
Well, that's not my forte. That's a realtor. That's
okay.
I'm just the one that's lending the money.
Okay, you lend the money. Okay.
So I will sit down with the client and I will show them what the house is actually going to cost them.
Okay.
And I do that in real dollars. It's wonderful to dream about the $1 million house, but not when you have the $200,000 pocketbook.
Right, right.
And in that, there are a lot of options that the clients have as well. I will qualify them first at their comfort level, and then whatever it might be. If they come in, well, I'm paying $1,500 a month now, I don't want to exceed $1,500 a month. The first thing I ask them is that, are you considering taxes and insurance, which are part of the escrows and part of the cost of the loan? If they
that
say,
can be a big part of your loan.
It can be a massive part of your loan.
A massive part of your loan. Yeah, that's true.
Because the tax base and the tax costs can vary from county to county and area to area. You have city taxes, you have county taxes, so forth and so on. So that's going to cut into the affordability of the property itself. Because that's why they call it principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And then, of course, if you have homeowners insurance, communities, the association fees are part of that as well. So you can cut down your affordability dramatically depending on what the tax bases are. But you know, then again, it depends on where you want to live. You know, everyone has that option. There are incentives out there through the municipalities, as I said, and through the state for people to buy homes, more so than there have ever been. The only thing that is lacking, and I think this is a good thing, is that there are no seller-funded programs. In other words,
seller-funded?
Sellers used to be able to
help you
provide a certain amount of money for down payment and so forth and so on. Now it's been limited to the client needs to put down their own money or money that they receive from a disinterested party, government agency, bond program, municipality. The seller still can pay a certain amount of the closing costs for the buyer, which is allowable.
Oh, okay.
Depending on the program, through conventional means, it's usually 3%. Through the government programs, it can be a little bit more, which when you're a first-time home buyer, you normally do not have a tremendous amount of funds.
That's very, very true. My first house was $20,000. The mortgage was $240 a month. When I sold it, I made $50,000 on the house a few years later. Do you know our time is gone?
Really?
Yes, we've been talking for 30 minutes, and we could still talk for another 30 minutes.
Well, that's why I told you on the phone, this could take months.
This could take, you may have to come back and do a second show.
I'd love to.
I'd love to have you back. I want to thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.
And it's been a real pleasure. You're my very first guest coming back after I got hurt, so you're special.
I get a button.
You get a button, yes.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for coming, and I want to thank all of you out there for watching. And again, thanks for your cards and your emails and your faxes and everything that you've been sending me. Until next time. What, my first